These are the 6.8 notes for trig. We're going to talk today about given information about an equation, about a graph, how do we write the function? So just remember you have your two basic functions here, y equals a sine of bx plus c, and then the same thing with a cosine. And then let's just review. Our amplitude is the letter a. That's how tall the graph is from the midline. The period is 2 pi over b. 2 pi over b. And remember, the period is how long the graph is until it starts to repeat itself. One cycle of the graph. And then the midline, which is the middle of the graph, is just your letter C. So if you notice, for amplitude and midline, it's just the letter. Those are going to be pretty easy to fit into our equation. But the period is what's going to take us a little bit of time. So over on the side here, I would like us to write the little equation that we're going to use. So we're going to take 2 pi over b. And regardless of what our period is, we're going to set it equal to that. And then this is how we're going to find the b, because the b is what goes into the equation, not the period. Okay, so for example number 1, write a sine function. Right? So you know you're going to be having the word sine in there. That has a midline of 4. Midline would be the letter C. Amplitude of 2. Amplitude is going to be our letter A. And then a period of 5 pi over 4. Now 5 pi over 4 is not the letter B. We have to use this to find the letter B. So we're going to take 2 pi over b and set it equal to the period they give us, 5 pi over 4. And that's how we're going to find b. So for each of these problems, we're going to cross multiply. b times 5 pi equals 2 pi times 4. I'll go ahead and multiply that to get 8 pi. Now, if you notice on each side that you have a pi, you can actually cancel those out right away. So now I have b times 5 equals 8. And we want to get b by itself, so we'll divide by 5. b equals 8 over 5. So now that we have a, b, and c, we can write our equation. So you can write it as y equals, or you can write it as f of x equals. So y equals my amplitude, a comes first, so 2, right here. And then I need to write the word sine. I'll abbreviate it to just S-I-N. And then we can put the b in front of the x, 8/5. Make sure you put the x there. And then the midline at the end, positive 4, would write as plus 4. In Delta Math, they give you f of x equals, and then they have you write in the rest of the equation, so you would not need to write y equals.
I guess we're evaluating sudden now. Have you ever had a form like this?
All right, sorry about that. Let's move on to example number 2. So this time it says write a cosine function that has an amplitude of 7. So remember, our amplitude is our a. Period 2 pi, we're going to have to use that to find b. So remember, that's not the b. We're going to have to use that to find the b. And then midline of -3 would be our c value. So we'll come off to the side, work on finding our b. So we set 2 pi over b, and we set that equal to the period, which they give us is 2 pi. Now I'm going to go ahead and put that with a 1 underneath it. And then if you can see what the answer is right now just by looking at it, you can go ahead and write that, skip to that part. If not, we'll cross multiply. b times the 2 pi equals 2 pi times 1, which would be 2 pi. Cancel out the pi's. You could also cancel out the 2's. I like to just divide out the 2. And 2 divided by 2 is 1. So b for this problem is going to be 1. Now that we have b, we can write our equation, our function, y equals, or f of x equals, that would be the same thing. We'll put the amplitude first. Cosine is abbreviated to the letters COS, cosine. And then since b is 1, we don't really have to put a 1 right here. You could put 1x, but more often than not, you'll see it written just as x. And then the midline of -3 would go at the end as a -3. Example number 3. Write a sine function, midline of 1, amplitude of 1, and a period of 4 pi. So now would be a good time to pause the video, see if you know how to do that, see if you could do that problem. And then you can kind of fast forward and rewind to the parts that you need extra help with. So midline of 1 will be our C, amplitude of 1 will be A, and this will be used again to find our B. So 2 pi over b equals 4 pi, and we'll put that over 1. Cross multiply. Cancel out the pi's, and then we can divide by 4. And 2/4 reduces to 1/2. All right, let's write the equation. This time I'm going to put f of x, just for the heck of it. Amplitude of 1, that would go up here in the front, but most of the time you won't see a 1 there. The 1's going to be invisible in front, so we'll just leave it off. Then we'll write sine of 1/2, put the b in, make sure you put the x, don't forget the x. And then the midline plus 1. You got to put the midline of 1. If you don't put anything for the midline, it counts as a 0. So make sure if it's a 1, you put the 1 there. And then maybe you make a note about an invisible 1 there. Whatever you need to do so you remember, you can come back to these notes and look at it. All right, on the back side, we have a couple more. Again, if you want to pause the video and just work through as many on the back side as you can, that would be good. Example number 4, write a sine function that has a period of pi, midline of 0, and an amplitude of 4. All right, we'll use that to find our b, midline of 0, c, and an amplitude of 4. That's going to be our a. So come off to the side, find b. Oops. 2 pi over b equals pi, and I'll put that over 1. Cross multiply. Cancel out the pi's, and notice how b is already by itself. That means you're done. B equals 2. So sine function, y equals, or f of x equals. Amplitude of 4, that goes first. Sine abbreviated to sin. We'll put the b in front of an x. Don't forget the x. And then the midline of c you don't need because it's a 0. So again, maybe you make a note. Invisible 0 there. Example number 5. Write a cosine graph, has an amplitude of 2, midline of -5, and a period of 4. Amplitude A, midline C. This we're going to use to find our B. So 2 pi over B, set it equal to the period that you were given. And 4 is a whole number, so I'll put it over 1. Cross multiply. And all the other problems so far have had a pi in it that we were able to cancel out. This one does not. So the pi is just going to stay there, and we're going to divide by the 4 to get the b by itself. And 2/4 will again reduce to 1/2. And 1 pi over 4 is more often written as just pi over 4. 1 pi over 4 is pi over 4. So we'll use that for our b. Y equals the amplitude A, cosine pi over 4x minus 5. A, B, C. Example number 6. Write a cosine function that has a midline of 8, an amplitude of 1, and a period of 3/7. This would be used to help find the b. Take a second now, see if you can try this problem. All right, so for this problem, example number 6, we get b is 14 pi over 3, and 14 over 3 does not reduce, so we'll use that 14 pi over 3 as our letter b. And then this one has an amplitude of 1, so you wouldn't need to write a number in front. Cosine of b, don't forget to put the x there. You need that x there, otherwise it's not an actual equation. And then an amplitude, a midline of 8 plus 8. And again, you can use f of x or y. Those are both going to represent the same thing. F of x is the same as y. All right, last one. Sine function. Period of 2 pi over 5, so we're going to use that over here. We would write 2 pi over b equals 2 pi over 5. And just looking at that, if you can tell what the b is going to be, you can go ahead and just skip to that part. But if the numerators are the same, the denominators would obviously have to be the same, so b would equal 5. If you wanted to go through the cross multiplication, it would look like this. Cancel out the pi's and divide by the 2. But again, if the numerators are the same, the denominators have to be the same. Y equals 2 for my amplitude, A, sine of 5, make sure you put the x. Midline of 0 means I don't have to write that 0. It's an invisible 0 at the end.